Diabetes and nutrition. Children with diabetes can eat all the same foods as anyone else. This includes sweets in moderation. However, to avoid low and high blood glucose, it is important for children with diabetes to balance the carbohydrate foods that they eat with their insulin dose. Carbohydrate foods raise blood glucose levels. This doesn't mean that carbohydrate foods are unhealthy for a child with diabetes to eat. It simply means that carbohydrate foods eaten need to be covered with insulin. There are 3 categories of carbohydrate foods. Children with diabetes can eat foods from all 3 categories. The first is grains and starches. Examples of grains and starches include breads and cereal, rice, pasta, crackers, granola bars, potatoes, French fries, potato chips, corn, popcorn, and corn chips, among others. The second category of carbohydrate foods include foods that contain natural sugars. Examples include fruit and fruit juices, milk and yogurt. The third category of carbohydrate foods include foods that are primarily sugar or have added sugar. Examples include sugar, maple syrup, molasses, honey, candy, sweetened drinks such as regular pop, fruit beverage, and flavored milk, baked goods such as cakes and cookies and squares. Remember, children with diabetes can eat from all 3 categories of carbohydrate food. This includes sweets in moderation. Children with diabetes can balance their intake of these carbohydrate foods with their insulin dose by eating according to their diabetes meal plan or by completing a simple calculation using a number called insulin to carb ratio to allow them to dose their insulin according to what they choose to eat. The family of a child with diabetes works together with their diabetes team to develop a diabetes meal plan. A diabetes meal plan is not a special diet for someone with diabetes. Instead, a diabetes meal plan outlines a range of carbohydrate foods that the child should eat with each meal and snack every day. The range of carbohydrate food for each meal and snack is based on the child's appetite and their nutritional requirements. The diabetes meal plan does not specify exactly what foods should be eaten each day. Instead, it will provides guidelines around the amount of carbohydrate food to eat at meals and snacks to match their usual insulin dose. When following a diabetes meal plan, it is important that meals and snacks are offered at approximately the same time each day. This has to be taken into consideration during planned school trips and other special events. The family of a child with diabetes and the school should plan ahead to ensure that the meals and snacks are not delayed from the usual time by more than approximately 30 minutes during school trips and other special events. The child can bring lunch and snacks from home or they can purchase from the cafeteria. The family of the child with diabetes may request nutritional information from the school cafeteria to help them plan meals and snacks that fit with the diabetes meal plan. When following a diabetes meal plan, children with diabetes should be encouraged to finish eating their meals and snacks as prepared by their caregiver or purchased at the school. However, if the blood glucose is above the target range when tested before a meal or snack, the child does not have to be encouraged to finish the entire meal or snack if they are not hungry. But the child should still be allowed to eat their entire meal or snack as scheduled if they are in fact hungry. Never withhold a scheduled meal or snack from a child with diabetes because of high blood glucose reading. Some children will use approach other than diabetes meal plan to match their carbohydrate intake to their insulin dose. Some children will complete a simple calculation using a number called insulin to carb ratio, often abbreviated as ICR, to dose their insulin according to what they choose to eat. Insulin to carb ratios are unique to each child with diabetes, and they can vary throughout the day. Children can use an insulin to carb ratio to dose their insulin for meals and sometimes snacks when giving insulin by syringe or pen or when using an insulin pump. Children who use an insulin to carb ratio to dose their insulin for meals and sometimes for snack no longer need to eat a set range of carbohydrate foods at meals or snacks. Dosing the insulin themselves gives the child the freedom to eat according to their appetite at each meal or snack. Let's look at an example of using insulin to carb ratio. Suppose a child with diabetes uses an insulin to carb ratio of 1 to 15 for lunch. An ICR of 1 to 15 means that 1 unit of rapid-acting insulin covers 15 grams of carbohydrate. Remember, insulin to carb ratios are unique to each child with diabetes and they can vary throughout the day. Another child might use a higher or lower insulin to carb ratio, for example, 1 to 10 or 1 to 25. To dose their lunchtime insulin, the child with diabetes using an insulin to carb ratio would complete the following 2 steps. They would count up the total grams of carbohydrate they are planning to eat or have just eaten for their lunch. Some children are able to do this on their own. Others will require the caregiver to include a note in their lunch with the carbohydrate values listed. They would then divide the total grams of carbohydrate eaten at lunch by their unique insulin to carb ratio. In this example is 15. Suppose the child plans to eat or just ate 60 grams of carbohydrate at lunch. To dose their insulin, they would divide 60 by their insulin to carb ratio of 15 for a result of 4. This child would need 4 units of rapid-acting insulin to cover the 60 grams of carbohydrate eaten at lunch. Physical activities such as gym class, playtime, or sports can lower blood glucose levels. To prevent low blood glucose or hypoglycemia, a child with diabetes may need to eat extra carbohydrate foods or beverages. The amount of carbohydrate needed would depend on the duration and intensity of the activity. The family of a child with diabetes will work with their diabetes team to identify how different activities affect the child's blood glucose level and the amount of carbohydrate required to compensate for the blood glucose lowering effect of each activity. If required, it is important to allow the child with diabetes to have a snack before, during, and or after the activity to maintain their blood glucose in their target range as indicated by their caregiver. A child with diabetes should also be given the opportunity to check their blood glucose level before, during, or after activity as indicated by their caregiver. The bottom line as it relates to nutrition and a child with diabetes at school is that children with diabetes can eat the same foods as anyone else. The key is to match the carbohydrate eaten with the insulin dose. All children should be encouraged to eat healthy meals and snacks. However, no child, regardless of whether they have diabetes or not, should be singled out for having a sweet snack such as Dunkaroos, fruit roll-up, or cookies. These foods, in moderation, can fit within a diabetes meal plan and can be accounted for using an insulin to carb ratio. Whenever there is a doubt about nutrition and a child with diabetes at school, call the child's caregiver for more information.
Insulin. The learning objectives for insulin are to discuss what insulin does and to review the insulin delivery methods available. Insulin is essential in the management of type 1 diabetes. Insulin is a hormone that is necessary to move glucose from the blood into the cells for energy and normal metabolism. Without enough insulin, high blood glucose results, causing excessive thirst and urination. Insulin is administered into the subcutaneous tissue by injection. It can be given by different methods, such as an insulin syringe, insulin pen, or insulin pump. Whether or not a student requires insulin at school depends on their individual treatment regime. Teachers are not required to give insulin, but may be asked to supervise the younger child measuring the insulin dose and injecting the insulin. There are different models of insulin pumps available, and each pump has unique features and operations. All insulin pumps deliver insulin continuously and require insulin administration by insulin pump with meals. If a pump infusion site falls out, it is imperative that the parent or caregiver be called, as the student is without insulin when this happens, and the blood glucose can rise rapidly. This is a demonstration of assembling an insulin pen for an insulin dose at school. This would be required by some students when they eat a meal. There are many types of pens on the market. We are going to show you using the Nova Rapid pen, which is the orange pen. They're all very similar in how they are used. You would take the cover off the pen and swab the top where the pen needle attaches. Then you would peel the paper off the pen needle. There's a prong inside which is inserted into the top of the pen, and twisting the pen needle slightly and then pulling off the large white cap. You may need to tighten the pen needle further once this cap has been removed. Now you would dial your insulin dose using the dial knob at the end of the pen. There are also, you will hear clicks, and there's also a number to indicate when you have dialed the correct dose. Once the correct dose is dialed, the student will remove the cover from the pen needle, exposing the needle, and they will inject their insulin. It is important that the dose that is dialed be confirmed to be the correct dose. Once the injection has been given, the pen needle would be unscrewed and placed in a sharps container, and the cover returned to the pen. This is a demonstration of giving an insulin bolus using an insulin pump. An insulin bolus would be required when the child is eating a meal. We are using 2 pumps in our clinic. The first is the Animas. The second is the Medtronic. Each pump is connected to the child by way of tubing and infusion site. When giving a bolus using the Animas pump, you would turn the pump on by pressing the OK button. Then you would press the OK button again where menu is highlighted, and go to bolus, which is highlighted. Press OK again. Normal bolus is highlighted. Press OK again. And this is where you would dial in your dose using the up and down arrows. Once the dose is dialed in and confirmed to be correct, press OK. Go is highlighted. Press OK again to deliver the insulin. The Animas pump counts down from the dose to 000, showing that the dose has been given. Using the Medtronic pump, you would wake the pump up pressing ACT. Bolus is highlighted. Press ACT again. Set bolus is highlighted. Press ACT again. And using the up and down arrows, dial in your dose. Once the dose is confirmed to be correct, press ACT, and the dose is being delivered, and the Medtronic pump counts from 0 up to the dose that you dialed in. Once the dose has been given, the pumps return to their home screens.